Hi there, I'm Steve Higdon coming to you from the Big Bourbon Club based in Louisville, Kentucky, all over the world. Whether you're a bourbon beginner trying to determine the difference between wheat and rye, or whether you've been in the game for a while and you're an old pro like me, we have created a community of bourbon enthusiasts from all walks of life, allowing you to engage with other people and learn from the very best in the industry. We have cultivated a community of master distillers and distilleries that have come alongside the Big Bourbon Club to provide monthly tastings, education, and barrel picks that you can find at BigBourbonClub.com. We even created our own app experience made just for you, our virtual speakeasy. The Big Bourbon Club app is designed to take your interaction to the next level. By becoming part of our community, you will gain access to our exclusive one-of-a-kind app platform, which allows you to engage with users from all over the world. From barrel picks to distillery tours and tastings, as well as behind-the-scenes access to knowledge and resources, the Big Bourbon Club is a gateway to new friendships that will help you enjoy bourbon like you never have before. Cheers.
Steve, welcome to the Bourbon and Ballz live stream. Thanks, buddy.
Well, guys, I appreciate the invite. Let me get situated here and take about four of the books underneath my phone, take them off since I don't have a real stand.
All right. All right. Well, so I appreciate you joining us.
That's my camera. Tell me that may be a little bit more balanced. There we go. There we go.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
Yep. So the Big Bourbon Club, we were telling some of our folks here and a lot of our folks that generally will watch this this weekend. But tell everybody at home as far as what the Big Bourbon Club is, and then we'll get into your personal life story as well.
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here very much, gentlemen. Yeah, first of all, BIG stands for Bourbon is Good. It's pretty simple. And I'm 61 years old. I've drank bourbon my whole life. I've been a big fan and someone who's really enjoyed it. And growing up in Louisville, Kentucky, and being in a couple of different professional roles that I've served, I've been blessed to get to know a lot of the people that make bourbon, a lot of the names that we've heard and we know. And as a result of that, over the last 30 years, I've just kind of blindly found myself with a lot of access to important people within the bourbon industry. And I went viral on TikTok. I'd never even been on TikTok. I didn't even know what it was. And about 4 years ago, it'll be 4 years ago, COVID, August of 2020, I had a bunch of videos in my phone that just selfie videos where I'd take the phone and turn it around. And I would do a very silly review for my sons and my nephews as they became of age and got out of college and moved all over the country. And we would stay connected through this texting chat that we did with the boys and my brother-in-law. And my son ended up probably 4 years after I started that, which would have been 15, 16, 17. He ended up posting one on TikTok and it went viral. And since that first one in August of 2020, I'm over 44 million views of pretty much picking up my phone with my hand, giving a very quick review, hence 60-second bourbon review. And that's it. And what was cool about it is, and I've been on shows like this and written up in different bourbon magazines and all. And the two words that I'm told a lot is that number one, I'm authentic, and number two, approachable and honest. And that's how people perceive me. I'm not doing this, and people are not paying me to review their bourbon. They are sending it to me, and I do get it for free now in many cases, not all cases. But I'm not on payroll, and I'm just telling you what I think. And if I don't like it, I'll tell you what I think. But that's it. And so I went viral, and after I went viral and I started racking up a bunch of followers on TikTok, I thought, well, maybe there's something more I could do with this that would, number one, be fun for me, but number two, play a role in trying to grow the love for bourbon around the world by making it more accessible. And so the way that I've tried to make it accessible is I bring in distilleries and brands, and once a month for over 3 years now, I've had live presentations and tastings, and they average 85 Big Bourbon Club members in person. They're ticketed events. They're 98% of the time in Louisville. On Saturday, this past Saturday, we had Old Forester. and they brought 4 different expressions. One of them was the 117 rum cast finish that they just released on Wednesday. And we had the 124 and a couple of others. We've had, when Penelope came here, it was coincidental in timing, but Danny and Michael, the owners, they announced, the press release came out late the night before, but they announced at the event that they had sold their company for $110 million.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that was just nothing more than lucky timing because it had been scheduled for 6 months. But typically what we do is we'll do a barrel pick with a brand, and then we'll try to release it at the event. But with all of that said, aside from getting 80 to 100, we had 110 people on Saturday, but besides getting all those people in there to taste the bourbon and hear the stories and learn, which is what the mission is, bringing access to you from the culture, the history, the personalities, the bourbon itself, I stream them live for free. So every one of my events, I have streamed live. There's a production crew, and we stream it, and we actually interact with the participants virtually because the Big Bourbon Club does have 6,000 members, and we're in 50 states and 14 countries. So the people, because of the virtual platform, are all over the country. And so we stream out that information so they can learn, because most of these people will never come to Louisville, Kentucky. So that's fulfilling the mission of trying to bring bourbon and the stories and the history to the people. And really, that's primarily it. It's to try to help people that I would say, if you're a bourbon beginner, I would rank you as 0. And if you're an expert, you're a 10. I think our sweet spot is trying to help people that are between that 0 and maybe a 6 or 7. Now, we've got some experts that are certainly a part of the group, but most people that are really, truly, they have access and they're experts, they don't need what we're doing. They already have their access. But if you want to meet brands, if you want to meet them while they're young and new, if you want to do what I call behind the red velvet rope tours and see things like Heaven's Door Distillery up in Henry County, Kentucky, in Pleasureville, we did the first public tour behind the scenes of the distillery. It's still not open yet today. We did the first tour ever of anybody that was not in the business, such as a retailer or a distributor. And I took 25 Big Bourbon Club members, and we went and we did a progressive tasting on their campus. We just did one of those at Limestone Farms. It's their distillery will hopefully be, it's been under construction. It'll hopefully be completed and up and running in early fall. But Tim Couch is an investor. It's in Georgetown, Kentucky. But we did their first event. And so just through relationships and access, we're getting our members a chance to see stuff that's new, that they haven't heard of, that, you know, some of these are big brands. Like we have Michter's coming up to an event. We just had Old Forester. We've had Brent Elliott, the master distiller at Four Roses. So we've had the big ones, we have the little ones, and we're trying to help the craft distilleries get in front of people so we can try bourbon. And if we like it, we'll buy it. And conversely, I'm trying to get the members in front of brands so they can learn from it. So that's kind of the whole nexus here in what we're trying to do.
So you've been around bourbon long enough to know the trends and the ups and downs, and it feels like that maybe, you know, we're pulling back a little bit from the height back in COVID. Do you kind of see that, you know, throughout the industry as far as how you see it, or how do you look at it?
That's a great question. Clearly, the height was at COVID. There's no doubt about that in terms of sales. But here's what's happened in the last 6 years. Annually for it's maybe even 7 years now, because I heard this factoid about a year ago. Consumption of bourbon globally has grown 42% a year for 6 years in a row. So that means it's compounded on the previous year and the previous year and the previous year. So consumption, people drinking bourbons, it's nearly tripled in the last 6-7 years. So that's the reason sales have spiked. What I have seen is that premium bourbons have clearly lost their luster. In 2023, the official number for premium bourbons, and I believe the number that I heard was like a $75 or $80 bottle and above, sales were off 33% from the year before. But sales were not off of the brands that are middle tier and lower tier. So what's happened is, instead of buying an old Carter for $220, people are getting 3 Old Forester 86s or a 1910 and an 1870, you know, and saving money, but getting really good bourbon. So, you know, I'm not so sure that I think we were at the height of price. Barrel prices have come way down. There is a glut of barrels in the marketplace. People are scrambling. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, particularly for some of the craft distilleries who've invested so much money into making bourbon. But if they stick to their knitting and do something really unique and good, I think they'll have a great chance because consumption has grown tremendously, and I don't think consumption is going down.
Yeah, you hit a good point there. I mean, we say all the time, you could get a really good bottle of bourbon for $20. You don't need to spend $120, $150 a bottle. You can get a really good. I mean, one we talk about all the time is Rebel 100. I mean, it's a $20 bottle up here in Ohio, and it is. I mean, it's great. You know, we put it up against, you know, what Michter's one time, and there was another high end bourbon that took on. Can't remember what they were now.
It did fairly well, and then we're only about a half an hour away from the New Riff distillery, which we all love here, which I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Sure.
I mean, all their offerings are, you know, in the range of $45 to $65, right in that sweet spot. And they have 8-year bourbons that they're releasing. That is, you know, $70. That is well under that $10 per se per year, right? For aged whiskey. So, I mean, there is a lot, and we just did the Green River Foolproof.
Yeah,
I know that's the latest thing where everybody's kind of getting their hands on. What are your thoughts on, you know, I don't know as far as with Green River, but locally we like New Riff a lot. What are your thoughts on a distillery like that? And then also, what are your thoughts on the fact that they're one of the few distillers that have not been bought out yet, right? You know, with, you know, you got the Wilderness Trail. They were kind of similar to New Riff, but, you know, obviously they've been bought out, and, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if New Riff maybe falls into that category, right?
Well, I think it's the, so in a previous life, I was CEO of the Louisville, Kentucky Chamber of Commerce for 10 years. So to see business owners and entrepreneurs start businesses, risk everything they have, leverage their homes, so on and so forth, to sell out and make a lot of money, which is the American dream, there's not a thing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. So it's not unusual at all that in the whiskey industry, you're seeing the same thing that you're seeing in the auto industry, the healthcare industry, and every other industry that you can name. People that are successful, those 1 out of 12 companies that really make it, they monetize by selling. They don't just double down, and most of them don't just double down and organically grow. They monetize through merger and acquisition. So I can't blame anybody. In fact, if I remember the numbers on Wilderness Trail, I think they sold 35% of their firm for $600 million. So they still control it.
Wow.
And it's almost $1 billion. How can you blame them? But I love entrepreneurship. The people that are making it, and Pat Heist is a great example at Wilderness Trail. That guy, and I know Pat, he has to be as smart as any bourbon maker out there. Between his PhD in chemistry and this, that, and the other, he's absolutely brilliant. And so he did all of this on the heels of a successful yeast company with him and his partner. But at the end of the day, they're making great whiskey, which is why they were able to sell. They built a great brand. New Riff has great whiskey, in my opinion, really, really good. They've got a great brand. And if it doesn't get gobbled up, I'd be surprised. And maybe the business owners just don't want to do it. My firm that I'm a partner in, we just launched an ESOP so our 52 employees can take part in the ownership. We could have sold, we chose not to. So a lot of companies don't do that. They sell out. So I don't blame anybody for doing that. But at the end of the day, I then wonder, on the other hand, if you look at the major companies, the Diageos and the Camparis, and you name however many there are, the 10 or so big ones, most of them have added the brands that kind of fulfill their portfolios, right? Bourbon's bigger than it's ever been, but it doesn't touch some of the other spirits in terms of sales. So most of their investments, other than Brown-Forman, of course, they're a traditionalist growing up here and doing it in whiskey the whole time, but they do have Jack Daniels. But a lot of them are they're doubling down in other, whether it's tequila or wine or whatever it is, and they're getting a couple of premium brands with recognition on the whiskey train, and they're getting distribution around the world because of their other products. So they're riding those coattails. It's inexpensive to distribute that way, and they're getting a higher margin, and it works.
And then who do you see that maybe, because we got a lot of, I would say the bulk of our viewers, and I think we're kind of unusual here to a lot of whiskey tubes. A bulk of our viewers, believe it or not, I know we're kind of being all serious and interviewing you and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But, normally this is a shit show. in itself.
We can change tone if you want.
I don't think the viewers mind that at all. So, I mean, usually it's a shit show, and they watch it for the entertainment and see how much I can mess up and everything else. And a lot of these people they're kind of dipping their toes in the waters of bourbon, whether it's through cocktails or on the rocks or whatnot. What would you say to those people as far as what their journey, what to expect in their journey?
Well, that's a great question. And it's obviously it's different for every individual. And most people that have been around bourbon would say the same thing, and that is enjoy it how you want to enjoy it, whether it's a cocktail or neat, or whether it's on ice, or it's whatever the brand is. Enjoy it how you want to enjoy it. Bourbon is a very complex spirit. If you start at the grains, and if you start at mash bills and making it there, it is scientific as it could be. It's not the old dude in Appalachia with a rusty radiator in the backyard making moonshine anymore. This stuff, these distilleries are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're scientists making whiskey like Brent Elliott and like Pat Heist. I mean, it's amazing what's happened with the industry. But at the end of the day, I believe, and I've not heard many, if anybody in the industry, really market themselves to support the consumer. Most of the influencers are working with the brands. They're working with the brands to present and to promote those brands. I'm working with the consumers, and through social media, consumers have a voice collectively like we've never had before. And when I was involved with corporate marketing at Papa John's is when I really learned that firsthand. But consumers dictate what happens, and if they don't like it, then they're not going to keep making more of it. They're going to change whatever they need to change. So I think for a new person, step in, try it however you want it. I always recommend to a newbie who asks where to start, I tell them to start with the Basil Hayden, and other people have suggested other brands, but here's the reason why. It's 80 proof, so it's the lowest proof point. It's readily available anywhere in the country. It's inexpensive, and it's really, really tasty. It's a good bourbon. And so it's not a bourbon that's going to take a new person and burn them up where they'll never want to try it again. Right. They shouldn't jump into a complex, higher proof bourbon. I think you start in at the entry point and use that as a gateway to go try other things and, test it from now and then and take the ice out and just sip it and learn the Kentucky chew, learn how to really get the most flavor out of that juice, and just let your journey take you where it wants to go. It's not predetermined. Let it go to where it wants to go and explore. Try, be like Christopher Columbus, explore and try different things until you find what your jam is and just follow it.
Yeah, and that's funny you say that, because many years ago when I started getting into it, Basil Hayden was one of my first that I tried, and that and Angel's Envy. They were lower proof and they didn't scare me or burn me away, and then over the years, obviously graduated up into the higher proofs, but yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what we do around here. I mean, we try to educate. I mean, as much as, like he says, as much of a
Dude, I would not call what we do as education.
Much of a shit show that it is, but yeah, we try.
Maybe we learn what not to do.
Maybe.
Yeah, you got that right. We talk about more about bad bourbons. We'll talk about all of them, and I care less if whatever. I mean, there are some badass bourbons.
Talk about being authentic and being honest with your viewers. I mean,
and then we also we're trying to introduce them to other local distilleries. We've been down to Boone County. We've been up to A.M. Scott.
Yeah.
We had Jason Bronner on 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, from
Buzzard Roost.
Let me tell you something about Jason. And again, this is just my opinion. I believe Jason Bronner knows more about wood in the cask, certainly than anybody I've ever met, and I've met a lot of people. He is absolutely a PhD in oak, white oak. How to do it, how to chart. Of course, he has a patent on his cask process.
Yeah.
He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, when we were talking to him, it was amazing. We spent more time on talking about Independent Staves company.
Chemistry,
the chemistry of it as far as his chart than we did about the bourbon. It's like the bourbon was almost like a secondary thing. Yes, I'll get the MGP, that kind of stuff. But where the magic happens for him, he really hones in on the char one and everything else that he comes in with those staves. I thought that was very educational to how he does it. Very good approach.
Yeah.
He's brilliant.
So we have a question for you from one of our viewers, Gandy Road. He wants to know, with so many members, how do picks work within the club? Do they release many barrels at once?
Well, I'll tell you exactly how it works. And no, we do not. I don't do a lot of picks anymore. I've done about 40 picks, so it probably averages out 6 or 8 a year. How it works is going on a barrel pick is without a doubt what my members tell me is the number one thing you can do if you're just a normal person in the industry, and if you could dream for the biggest thing, it's to go on a pick. They're so much fun and educational. They're just a blast. And they're hard to get because you have to know someone who's got a pick, and they're not easy to get picks. The way I do it is we have 6,000 members. There are probably 500 are premium members. That means they pay either 125 a year or the 75 a year level. So the premium members are the only ones who can go on a pick. The free members cannot go. They're not even eligible to go. And the way I do it, it's just a rotational basis and kind of first come, first served. And so I've had, if you think that I've had, I don't know, 40 picks and I've had an average of 8 a pick, I've taken 340 people, roughly 320 people on picks that would have never had a chance to go. And it's an absolute blast. And then the premium members have first right at buying the bottles. And so in the first 2 or 3 years, the bottles would sell out quickly. Now everybody in the frickin' country has a Yellowstone barrel pick. They could be in Casper, Wyoming. You could name a city I've never heard of. They've got Yellowstone barrel picks where no one did before.
Mm-hmm.
I did the first Yellowstone barrel pick.
Really?
I did the first foolproof barrel pick. And everybody has those now. Everybody does. I was really lucky you mentioned Wes Henderson. So Wes, when I was running the chamber, he moved back to Louisville, and we met about him wanting, and I didn't know him from Adam then, but we met about him wanting to start up a distillery, and I knew nothing about it. But I was helping him with the real estate piece, which is where they're at now on the old Vermont America building on East Main Street. Anyway, turns out Wes has 5 sons, and we've got 4, and they went to grade school at St. Margaret Mary together. And then they went to Trinity together, and we became very good friends. And my youngest son, Andrew, was best friends with his second to last son, Christian. And Christian ended up spending the night at our little farm for, I bet, 20 times, and became very close friends. And so I was invited over to Wes's house with his dad, Lincoln, and a bunch of the other dads of the kids, not because of our bourbon prowess, but because of our kids' relationship, playing soccer and whatnot, being friends together. And he had his first Angels Envy release party out of his garage, and we got the first bottles.
Jeez.
And that was probably 25 years ago. And what I really, really, really remember about it, like yesterday, and other than this one point, I don't remember much. But their first expression, they kept in the port barrels for, I don't know, 2 months longer, 3 months longer, whatever. But it was a much more porty flavor than what they ultimately ended up on. And I absolutely loved it. And what they have now, I think, is good, but I don't love it like I love that one. But it's just fun being connected and knowing people down here and having opportunities to do fun things.
So speaking of your memorable barrel picks, so what else can you think of that you can tell everybody that, well, like you said, any barrel pick period, I think will be memorable. But you've done quite a few of them.
It's everybody asks me what's my favorite distillery. I don't think you can say what's your favorite distillery because they're all different.
Sure.
I kind of relate distilleries to baseball stadiums. And if you think of Buffalo Trace and Woodford and Makers, the really big ones, they kind of remind me of like a Fenway Park, a Yankee Stadium, a Wrigley Field. The old traditional, Buffalo Trace had all of the players, like Yankee Stadium had Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. But then you can go to a mid-tier and you can get a Peerless. And it's more like, to me, a AA or AAA stadium that's like Louisville Stadium, where they built into the old Brinley Hardy building that was 120 years old. It's brick on the front, but it's small and quaint. And then I believe if you go down to like a single A ball, it's like a whiskey thief here in Lawrenceburg area, where you actually thieve your own barrel, and it's in a barn. It's like single A baseball, and you're taking batting practice.
Yeah.
And so I could tell you experiences from every barrel pick. I won't forget any of them, but I would say one of my favorites is when we went out to Carbondale, Colorado with Marble Distilling. We did their first pick, and we become very close friends. And we took 2 other couples from the Big Bourbon Club, and Colorado whiskey with the elevation and the local grains and water, it tastes very different. They're not trying to emulate Kentucky whiskey, and it doesn't taste like it, but it's really, really, really good. In fact, we tasted from 9 barrels that was about 5.5 years old. It was their own distillate. They never sourced. And the predominant note of the barrel that we picked was buttered popcorn. And I swear to you, if you smelled it, you would smell it. I have never used that term ever, nosing or flavoring a bourbon, until one of the ladies that night said it. And it is so prominent, buttered popcorn. But it was a blast because it's 6,000 feet in the shadows of the mountains. I think maybe my coolest big distillery was Heaven Hill, because we did it in a rick house, and it was a fall day, and the corn was high, getting ready to be harvested. The wind was blowing in. The weather was perfect. And of course, the whiskey, Elijah Craig, it's incredible. But that was a very memorable, the Weller Foolproof first pick it was freezing out. And in fact, Dan Issel, who's in the NBA Hall of Fame, he was with me on that. It was fun, but it wasn't that big of a deal because it was so damn cold. We wanted to get out of there.
I get to actually get it. Well, I think I'm gonna go on Thursday. I get to do my first barrel pick ever. I go down with Fred Minnick at Green River. So we're gonna do the 8 of us is gonna go down there and do a barrel pick on Thursday. I've never done one before, so I can't wait to go down there to see how that's like.
You'll love it. I've never been to the old O.Z. Tyler, the Green River Distillery, but it's an old one, right? And it's a big one. I bet it. I'm told I had my first Green River Foolproof. You mentioned it last week. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Never had one before.
Yeah.
And
we had, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've done 2 Blue Note picks out of Memphis. And this last one, I took 25 members of the club down to Memphis, and both of the barrel picks sold out quickly, even this last one. And it's delicious, and it's all sourced out of Green River.
Yeah, we when I first we have a quarterly tasting. Charlie hosts it. We have about 12, 15, 16 people. Yeah. And my first time I came here, I bought a bottle of Green River, and it was before they were bought by Bardstown.
Yeah.
So the distillate, the bottle did not fare too well. Let's just say that.
It ended up being dead last out of 12 bottles that we tasted that night.
Boy.
It was the consensus, but it's amazing what, with Bardstown taking over, and then now we have the Foolproof. I mean, that bourbon is excellent. Mm-hmm. That is one of your best $50, $60 bourbon that you're going to find on the market.
Yeah, it was very good. It was a nice surprise.
Yes.
I'll tell you another. I think maybe the most interesting pick I've ever done was with Garrison Brothers out of High Texas. So they aged their whiskeys in 15-gallon casks. And so in a 15-gallon cask, we got 75 bottles, I believe. And of the 4 we chose from, only one was less than 140 proof.
Oh my goodness.
And they're almost $200 a bottle, and it's incredible. And it sold out in day one. Of course, there weren't that many bottles, but the proof point is so high, but it's still so complex with so much flavor.
Yeah, we've got a little sample here. I don't know if you're familiar with the Woodford Bourbon guy on TikTok.
Sure.
Yeah. You heard him talk about Edwin Coe and the 176 proof.
That's not even bourbon.
Yeah,
that's straight. That can't even be bourbon.
Yeah.
We used to drink pure grain in 8th grade, or no, high school, whatever it was. That's not even whiskey. That's just pure grain alcohol.
Yeah. We're gonna try this. It'll put some hair on our chest and probably some other places as well, but we'll give that one a shot later.
Earlier.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to say I was at Mattingly several years ago, and they call it their hazmat bourbon. It was like 152, which is the hottest bourbon I've ever had. I guess it's whiskey, but it's whiskey by definition, but it was pretty interesting.
I'm sorry, I missed the brand. Who'd you say?
Mattingly, 1845.
Oh wow, jeez, please. Let's say, so another question Gandy has to ask is, how do tastings work with his group? I'd imagine you do them virtually.
Well,
or how does it work?
Well, I don't know what a tasting means, but we do a combination of virtual events and live events. As I mentioned, our big tastings are in person in Louisville, and it's where the distillery, the brand comes, and they bring 4 or 5 different expressions, and everybody sips them all, and we talk about each one and compare them and vote on them, and just have a lot of fun learning about the brand. We do have a virtual series. So let me back up a second. You mentioned it. I'll embellish it. We have an app, and when you join the club, bigbourbon.club.com, you just hit join here, and you can join either free, 75 or 125, and the benefits are different for each. But if you join any of them, you'll download the app at that point, and within the app, we're getting about 800 engagements every day. So members of the club all over the country, maybe world in some cases, are DMing each other. They're posting on there. They're trading bourbon. It's a very active community within the app, and they're all over. So we'll do lives within the app. I've got several distilleries that are doing some really cool things that are specifically in the app, and only the members of the club can see what they're doing in terms of LTOs and special offers and deals. And the distilleries pay for access to the app, obviously, because of all the people. One of them was, I was in Panama City of Panama, the country, in March, and did a pick there. And we'll be releasing it in November. It's called Grander Rum. Grander, if you're not familiar with the term, is a nickname for a 1,000-pound marlin. If it's 1,000 pounds or bigger, they call them Granders, 1,000. And so that's the name he chose. And it's a kid, Dan Dehart, out of Louisville, that went to my high school, but I never knew him until a few years ago. And he's been down in Orlando for 15 years, but he's created a great brand, and he's changed that whole category of rum. And so all rum is aged in used bourbon casks. So it could age for 10 years, 13, 8, or 2, whatever it ages. But what he does that's been different, and others are copying him, is he will go find one-time used bourbon cask of big brands, like Fitzgerald, Weller 107, Pappy, 1910, you name it. He'll buy those one-time used straight from the distillery, and he exports them to Panama. And so after he gets his bourbon aged from it's almost like the MGP of rum down there. It's a massive distillery. We toured it, met the owner. It was very cool. And they're making rum for people in Africa, Russia. Bruno Mars's brand is made out of there, but a lot of the rum in the world comes from there. Well, he buys his rum there. He gets the old stuff, and then he'll age it for a year, 2 or 3 in this one-time use cask of a big brand. So I got to do a barrel pick, and I chose from 6 barrels. One was Elijah Craig, one was Antique 107. There was a full proof. There was a Old Fitz 1910, and mine was a blind test, and I chose the 1910.
Okay.
And it's single barrel. It's not single in the sense that it went into the second barrel, but it's not blend. It's a single barrel. It's 131.6 proof. It's got absolute hints of bourbon. It's turned brown now, not deep brown, but a brown where the other ones don't. It's incredible. And so he'll come on, and we'll do some private tastings. In fact, we've had 12 different members of the club join Dan as ambassadors in different markets where he needed help because he's only one guy. So he said, Steve, I need help. And I'm going to make this up: Nashville, Dallas, St. Louis. And so I went on the app, and I procured anybody interested to go help and meet Dan and be a part of what he's doing in your local market, to introduce him to liquor stores and top bartenders and restaurants, and get inside that red velvet rope. And he's got 12 Big Bourbon Club members working for him now. And this is part-time for them, but it's really fun to learn stuff and have, and meet the maker.
Yeah, I know that Pursuit United does that a lot. They will reach out within their community and have ambassadors kind of go different cities and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty awesome to hear.
Well, I'm getting ready to do it with Old Dominic I'm working with, and they've asked me to do the same thing. We haven't done it yet, but we've got other brands that want it. So we'll see what happens. But it gives a lot of people, no matter where you are, an opportunity to do something that otherwise you would never even know about by being within that app and that ecosystem.
I can imagine you get approached quite a bit, right? As far as distillers as far as whether it's an ambassador or kind of help their brand. I can't imagine they'd be stupid not to. But I would imagine you get quite a few of those requests from time to time.
I am, and I've got to be very careful not to overdo it, because I probably am now, because I have a real job during the day. But I'm being very careful. I'm trying to be very careful with, hand picking who I really want to work with, and where it's, going to be easy for me, but I can add value to them, and you get access to new stuff. We did. I mentioned Heaven's Door. We went to the Pleasureville Distillery, and I've said this to 1,000 people. Trust me. When you see their distillery campus, when it's complete and open to the public, it is absolutely the coolest distillery campus in the state of Kentucky. There's not one that's cooler than it.
Wow.
Now, this is not an old one. It's not a big one. The reason that it's cool, in my opinion, is that they have 140 acres. It's in rolling Kentucky hills. It's gorgeous. But at the bottom of the valley, and probably 40 acres, they went out about 6 years ago and purchased 8 or 9 antique log cabins and one grist mill and a general store from the 1700s to early 1800s from Ohio, Pennsylvania, all over. They purchased them, took them down, moved them to Kentucky, and they rebuilt them down in this lower area of their campus. And they're turning that into their tasting rooms, Airbnbs. They've got a general store. They've got an actual grist mill from the 1700s that works. And you feel like you go back in time 200 years. It is so cool. It's just absolutely incredible what they're doing there.
I'm sorry. I was listening to a podcast from Whiskey Cast, Mark Gillespie, and he was down. He was one of the first journalists down there at the Heaven Hill thing, and he could not stop talking about it. He was raving about that.
Yeah, and then we got the opportunity. So they created their urban experience in Louisville in an old church. It's a big church in downtown Louisville. And we were able, Big Bourbon Club was able to open it up, be the first in their main room there. And we had over 100 people for a Heaven's Door tasting. And we were the first group ever in there. And so we streamed that out live, tasted their bourbons. Everybody had a blast. And we're getting access to do a lot of really fun things. And again, if you're stuck in Wyoming or California and wherever you may be, you can watch it all and stream for free and take part that way.
So Heaven's Door, that's Bob Dylan, correct?
Uh-huh.
So speaking of influencers, right? So, we have quite a few out there, and I think some that has no reason to be in the bourbon industry, quite frankly. I don't, the one thing that really confused me on one of them, I don't know what your thoughts was. We did one on Traveler's Whiskey, right? And it was very well documented as far as who was behind it and all that kind of stuff. What I didn't get out of it is the fact that one is he doesn't drink. He is he's sober as all get out when it comes to Chris Stapleton endorsing Traveler Whiskey, which I never understood that. And my other thing is, why in the world didn't Jack Daniels freaking grab him for Tennessee Whiskey? I never understood that one either.
I don't have any idea about any of your answers, but I will tell you one answer where you should know the answer to. Why did he do it? He did it because he's making a little change. He's making it for money.
I get it, but it almost discredits the. I mean, once the rush comes out, then it just dies off, and now you can find it on every shelf, and it's horrible. It's
not even very good. It's not even very good whiskey, but to me, it's not Chris Stapleton whoring himself as much as it is Buffalo Trace, in my opinion.
Okay.
Buffalo. Well, this is just an opinion, but I don't. Yeah. If anybody doesn't need to go get a big name to promote themselves, it's Buffalo Trace.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't even need distributors, for Christ's sakes, to sell their stuff. That's why they got rid of them, and they're going at $8.50 a delivery per box versus 24%, because they don't need RNDC to sell it. It sells itself.
Well, just like they don't need the Bourbon Trail either.
That's true.
No, they don't. And they're not part of the Kentucky Distillers Association, so they've got their own path. But if anybody can do it, they can. Mark Brown is the retired chairman. I sat next to Mark, literally next to him, for 14 years on the Louisville Zoo board. And he's British. I don't know if you knew that or not. He just retired. He may still be chairman of the board, but he's brilliant. He absolutely is attacking the 3-tier system and said, screw it to the Southerns and the RNDCs. And he said, I don't need to pay you 23% for delivery on a brand that you don't help sell. I sell it myself. It sells itself. So I'm going to pay a per delivery box to a beer distributor who's already going to the same liquor store. And so they're paying $8.50 a box now all over the country. And it saved
No,
him. I heard the number, but I heard I don't remember the number on the bottom line, but it's like 61 million a year they're saving.
Oh, wow.
And it's selling more than it's ever sold. So I don't know why they needed Chris Stapleton. I think that was silly. It's not even bourbon. And it's not good.
No, it's not. On the other hand, I think we did a few of our tastings where we had this 12 bottle. I think the best one that comes to my mind, it wasn't like it was good. I wouldn't say it was great. We did that blackened.
Yeah.
That Metallica brand.
Yeah.
That actually is not a bad bourbon. That we thought
I
that
don't
was
like it.
that we thought that was really done really well and 3 chord. What are your thoughts on those kinds of things? What is your one that you feel that all right, it's a solid bourbon. This thing could sell without the celebrity, but there's some that aren't whatever. Like I don't like Long Branch to me. I don't particularly like. But anyways, what are your thoughts on those?
I don't like Long Branch either, and I don't like Matthew McConaughey. I can't stand him, in fact. So I probably wouldn't bat just for that reason. But the Metallica, they hired Shanahan's master distiller. What's his name? I'm drawing a blank. Do you know it? The guy with the big sideburns. Great guy. Great guy. So he was Stranahan's master distiller for years and years and years, and Metallica hired him to run theirs. And I met him at Bourbon and Beyond last year and spent a little time with him and his girlfriend. Very cool guy. What he told me about that brand, which I didn't know anything about, and he is into the science of reverberation.
Yeah.
In aging. So did you know how he ages because I think he's in a garage or something, and so you're not going to get the temperature flows and the natural movement of an old rick house. So he plays Metallica music really loud and it shakes the barrel.
Yes.
And he starts telling me the science behind it. I don't even understand half the words he's using, but he's telling me the science behind it, just like Jason Bronner's talking about the science behind wood. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm going to the moon.
You're saying there's data behind the reverberation of that bourbon.
He thinks there's science that bourbon will age faster through sound reverberation versus sitting there in a rick house.
Now, are we talking Dave Pickerel?
No. Dave's no longer with us. Oh, goodness gracious.
Just that thought, like when I first heard that, obviously to the average consumer, they're going to think, no way, this is gimmicky, all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, like he may be right, because that bourbon is not a bad bourbon. It's actually a pretty good bourbon.
Well, I can tell you what. I can tell you this. You can't prove him wrong because no one knows. I mean, really.
Or is it Rob Dietrich?
Oh, good Lord, that Jefferson's Ocean. Don't get me started on that. Dude, we had this one member that sits there and says he can taste the damn sea salt off freaking the Jefferson's Ocean. I'm like, dude, get out of here. Don't even do that shit. That I don't know so much. All that sloshing around.
I was. Have y'all heard of Coppers and Kings in Louisville?
Yeah. Yep. I've had that. That's pretty good.
Have y'all been there?
No. I've had their bourbon.
So they make brandy. They distill brandy with Vendome stills on site.
Mm.
It is unbelievable. And they asked me to come down, not because of my expertise in brandy, because I've never had it before, but their sister company, and I think it's Campari who owns them, and High West out in Park City, Utah.
Okay.
So it's Campari that owns them both. And so Campari sent them, this was 2 or 3 years ago, like I want to say it was 300 barrels of bourbon, and they're finishing it in brandy barrels. So they're exploring with a finish, but they took me on a tour and they aged their barrels of brandy and bourbon underneath, it's like a garage underneath of the still. So it's total concrete. There is no temperature flow. And so what they do the music thing. And this is when I first heard about it. And they do a playlist of the day. Every day of a week, they change their playlist, and they ask members and fans of the members of their different. And so they'll choose different genres. So they'll do a classical one day, opera, country, heavy metal, classic rock, you name any genre of music.
You've got
And
to.
they do a playlist, and all night long when they leave, they have it cranked up so loud you can't hear yourself think.
No shit. I've got to visit this place.
You've got to. You have to. And it's really cool, and it's really delicious.
Well, I've had their buddy of mine, I think it has a pick of theirs, and it's phenomenal. But good Lord, that's an awesome story. That makes like a lot of viewers just, whether regardless if they like bourbon or not. I mean, that story in itself is amazing in order just to even go check it out, right?
Yeah.
They've got a big Vendome pot still. The master distiller knows as much as any master distiller I've ever met. They're brilliant. And of course, they've been down there for 15 years making brandy and making money at it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's amazing.
Man, you mentioned pot still, and I'm sorry, every time someone says pot still, I gotta say it. I love my Old Stubborn. And I need to ship you a sample of Old Stubborn with Ed Bly, the blender on that. He did one phenomenal, and I'm not a big pot still guy. And the fact that it's either pot still or it basically accentuates the taste, in my opinion. So it's either going to make something really bad or really good, and it's really going to come out very powerful, whether it's bad or good. But Old Stubborn too. This show knows it too. I talk about it ad nauseum. But it's one of my favorite bourbons. But
yeah, that's what we talk about.
I've never had Old Stubborn. I heard it's good.
Yeah,
I got to send you a sample. So Gandhi did ask, what distillery is up and coming that we haven't heard about yet? And we won't take too much more of your time. I know you're a busy guy, but what distillery is up and coming that we have not heard about yet that maybe our viewers should know about?
I would have told you Limestone Branch 5 years ago when they're making 1 barrel a day. And of course, now they're owned by MGP and it's Yellowstone. Today, I would think it's Limestone Farms, unrelated, even though they have the same first word, but Limestone Farms in Georgetown, Kentucky. We've done 2 kind of behind the red velvet rope events. I think I mentioned earlier, we're getting ready to do their first ever single barrel pick. And it's incredible what they're doing. It's incredible juice. Now obviously they've sourced to get to this point, but the brand is launched. And the distillery, they're hoping to have a grand opening here in August or September. They've got big money behind it. They're building a 4,000 seat amphitheater, a hotel. It's a campus, kind of like what Log Still's done, big time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think immediately comes to mind as an up and comer that you don't know that you need to know now.
Okay. And then Rob Franklin asked, it's a pretty simple question, but yet it could be a complex answer. What's your favorite rye? That's like asking me, what's my favorite cheese?
Yeah, it's hard. I will say this. You all mentioned something earlier that was near and dear to my heart. My favorite inexpensive rye is Rebel Yell, without a doubt. $18 a bottle. I've reviewed it many times. It is absolutely, I mean, I'll pay $18 a drink. I won't, but most people pay $18 for a drink at a bar. I can get a $7.50 of, all that I have is Rebel Yell. It's the same juice for the Rebel, but it is fantastic. It is delicious. I think Angel's MD Rye is incredible. I think another one, middle of the road, is Minor Case Rye, which is Limestone Branch. Really, really good. And for less than $40 a bottle, great value for a delicious rye. And those are what come to mind right now.
Okay. All right. Well, shoot. I mean, an hour has already passed, and I know your time is extremely valuable. And then we'll get this out to the rest of our viewers over the weekend, and they'll get to watch this. I'm gonna probably just take this segment and make it its own show, and that way they don't have to hear us yap all night long. And then that way they just hear Steve. But
yeah, it's kind of like what we talked about, Steve, on Saturday. I think it was on the live stream. That we'll probably repackage this and repost it another day or another time.
Yeah,
and like you said, as its own.
Mm-hmm.
And I will also let everybody know that the Big Bourbon Club app, I think it's under Mighty when you join.
Mm-hmm.
When we said it earlier, I mean, it opens up a whole world to you, and the bourbon community on there is like anywhere else on the like on YouTube or TikTok. Great bunch of guys,
but it's active. That's what I really liked about it. It is extremely active, And I was a kid in the candy store on Saturday when I downloaded that app. And I swear to God, I mean, there is so much information there. You can't get through it all in one setting. Like you got to obviously go back to it because there's all kinds of things going on. You got beginner versions.
There's a lot going on, and it's really cool. But if you don't mind, can I mention just you mentioned YouTube earlier, but I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We've got a little over 500. We just started, but if anybody would be willing to subscribe, it's free. Once we get to 1,000, there's a lot of things we can do on there. I've got a new show with a major cigar influencer. It's going to be really cool. And and Jeff, I was wondering, when did you say you're going to wire that $2,000 over for coming on tonight?
I'll do it right now.
I'm just joking.
We'll see how
that was
far.
a blast, guys. I appreciate your time and let me come on. It was fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Gandy's asking one quick question. What's the name? No, he's not going to tell you till you guys sub, and we got to get him over 1,000. Then he'll reveal who that is. So.
I think maybe he wants to know the name of the YouTube channel.
Oh, the YouTube channel. I would imagine it's Big Bourbon Club.
Well, it is Big Bourbon Club. Exactly. I didn't say it, so you wouldn't have known it, but it is Big Bourbon Club on YouTube. And then go to Big Bourbon Club and download the app and sign up for free. We're doing some really cool things. And this is where I'll end it. It's true that my club, it's like a workout facility. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out. There's a lot of folks that don't do much, but if you want to join the lives, if you want to get in the barrel picks and you want to, I met with Fawn Weaver about 4 weeks ago in Nashville. She's the founder, owner of Uncle Nearest. And she is committed to do something unique and special with Big Bourbon Club with her book that just came out. And we're going to do it. It's not, we haven't outlined it all yet, but there's so many cool things happening. I just did an event with Julian Van Winkle, and we sat with 25 members of the club and we drank a bottle of Pappy 23. And for 2 hours, people was Q&A with Julian. Yeah. It was incredible.
I bet that was just more of just an awe as far as just understanding where you're at and the history that comes behind it, right?
Yeah, and again, literally, this is the last time I'll say. Someone asking the question made me laugh. They said, "So we like that Van Winkle 12-year-old Lot B," and he said, "But I've always been curious. What does Lot B mean?" And he goes, "Well, we ran out of Lot A." That was the answer. No more Lot A to run Lot B.
That's funny. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Never knew that.
And the funny thing is, I mean, Weller 12 was his favorite. Is that right?
He said his favorite. I don't remember. You could go back because all of these live events are on Big Bourbon Club. You can watch them all, and they're on YouTube as well. Actually, they're all on YouTube if you're on. But I think his favorite is gin and tonic. It's either vodka or gin is what he typically drinks. I'll tell you one last story about him, and I'm done.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. I love stories. Love these stories.
First, I don't know Julian well, but the first time I met him, he came over to the house. It was, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was. And he comes to the door, and he's very casual. And, of course, I knew what he looked like from pictures. He's just as nice and as quiet of a Southern gentleman as you could even dream of. So he walks in. It was 5 o'clock on a Friday night. I was exhausted from work that week. And I said, and in fact, I already opened a new bottle of bourbon, and I was going to pour a drink right as he knocked on the door. I said, "Can I get you some drink?" He goes, "Yeah, I'd love a water." So Julian walks in behind me into the kitchen, and I popped open a Weller 107 Antique, and he looks at it, and I start to pour the water. He goes, "Steve, I tell you what," he goes, "I think I'll just have some of that Weller 107. He changed his mind, and we sat on the porch, and my wife came in, and she drove up, and we stayed there for hours and had a blast. Good time. He's a great guy.
Wow, invaluable. So yes, again, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's help Steve and the Big Bourbon Club get over 1,000 subs. That way we can see what else they have to offer. But I'm telling you guys, that Big Bourbon Club app is absolutely phenomenal. It's like a world that I didn't know existed. And it's very active. And that's why I say what I say, because there's other clubs too. I mean, we all belong to other clubs and all that kind of stuff. And but this is truly whatever level you're at, they have a level for you. It is a phenomenal thing. And Steve, what you do, you're definitely one of the ambassadors to bourbon. One day I hope for you to. I know they just came out with another list of Hall of Famers. One day you're going to be in that one.
Well, you're nice to even say that. But gentlemen, I appreciate it. You'll have a great week. And
Okay.
we'll talk soon, I hope.
Yep.
All right,
It was an
thank you.
honor to have you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.